Happy Wednesday, everybody. We are finally going to get to our Irish meal. And if you read the intro, you'll know that we are doing cabbage and bacon. Now, that may not sound like a really exciting meal, but the way we do it, it's going to be amazing. So, let's get started because we have a little bit to do today and we're a few minutes late getting started. So, if you're joining me live, thank you for being patient. If you're watching this in a replay on the Facebook page or on YouTube, thank you for watching the replay. And I hope that this gives you an idea to make a delicious meal for your family that's going to be easy and delicious all at the same time. And that's really what we need to shoot for. You know, so many times I have people say, I can't do keto because I don't have time to do all that meal prep. All that meal prep. It doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to take tons and tons of time. It doesn't have to take your whole day off. It can. If you want it to and you love to cook, you can do all kinds of wonderful things, but it doesn't have to. Keep it simple. Keep it simple. Keto it's simple. That's what we're going to do. And we are also going to turn on Do Not Disturb, and hopefully that will stop all of that chatter. Now, another thing that we want to talk about before we get started here is I have got a delicious cup of coffee, and what I have in my cup of coffee today is hazelnut. But I want to talk to you about something that I have discovered. Now, you can get this from me usually at the markets that I attend. Speaking of which, I will be at the Wetaskiwin Farmers Market today from 2:30 to 5:30. It's at the Ag Center on Highway 13 East. Come look for it. You can Google Wetaskiwin Ag Center. It'll lead you right there. And I will be there with a selection of Da Vinci sugar-free syrups. Now, I will not have the one that I'm going to talk to you about right now, but I want you to know, now we talked about this before, the peppermint patty sugar-free syrup. Now, putting this in club soda is delicious, but I got to tell you, it is also delicious in coffee. And if anybody had told me that before I tried it, I probably would have laughed in their face, but it is what it is, and it really is delicious, and I have enjoyed it several times. And I've also served it to a skeptic who wasn't so sure they even wanted to try it, and once they had it, they knew it was delicious. So try it with a little bit. You don't want to make it too strong. If it isn't quite enough, add a little bit more. Maybe try adding a little bit of cream. Some things need cream, other things don't. And right now, I have my... well, I will show you. I have my cup of coffee, just black. And usually I do have it black. Depending on what I'm doing, I might have a little bit of cream in my first cup of coffee in the morning. And there's a reason to put either cream or butter in your coffee. If you get the growlies and you just want to munch first thing in the morning or halfway through the morning before we get to lunch, put some cream or some butter in your coffee first thing in the morning, and I promise you it will help keep those growlies away. Okay, so let's get started. Now, the first thing we need to do is get out a cutting board, and we are going to take just a wee bit of a package of bacon, and we're going to start this frying. Okay, and we want this, now if we could get thick cut bacon, that would be even better. Just like a bacon ration would be awesome that you could cut up yourself. There, okay, now I'm just going to set that aside and I will put that away in a little bit. Now, this is Kirkland low sodium bacon. But Sharon, you keep saying that sodium isn't an issue, and it isn't an issue. The reason that I get the Kirkland no sodium bacon is because it is the only bacon that I have found at Costco that is not sugar cured. So that is something to keep in mind when you're looking at any type of bacon. Always make sure that you read the ingredients. And I want to show you something. Now I am just going to throw this in our frying pan and let it start cooking. We want this bacon to be well done. And typically, I like my bacon soft, but in this case, we're going to have it a little bit on the crispier side. Okay. Now, while that is doing what it's doing, we're just going to cut this in, break this up a little bit, but as it warms up, it'll break up on its own. Okay, now we need cabbage. Now you want to make sure that you peel any wilted leaves. Now we're going to be wilting this cabbage, so this isn't maybe as big a deal as it might be with some cabbage dishes, especially if you're doing a raw one. But you want to take the outer leaves off. You don't know who's been touching these, so off they go and into the compost. Are you composting yet? I really, really hope you are. It is so good for our environment. If you don't live in an area that does compost, start your own compost in your backyard. It is an awesome idea. Now, we are going to cut this cabbage in half. We're going to try to cut this cabbage in half. There we go. Okay. Now, once you've got it cut in half, easiest way to get this core out is to do it at this point. Now, you can do it before you cut it in half, I suppose. I don't. And even though I had raw bacon on this cutting board, you'll notice that I'm putting my vegetables on it because they're all going to be cooked, so it is not an issue. There we go. Now, if you got a little bit more than just the core, you can trim it off if you want to. I happen to think that the core on cabbage or broccoli or cauliflower is the best part of the vegetable, so I'm going to keep that for later. I'm going to make some TSL Organics ranch dips, and I'll have something crunchy to dip in it. Okay, now we're going to do this half. Now, I'm not going to be doing all of this in our bacon dish, but I am going to be making some coleslaw for Del to take to work. So if you have a meat slicer, that is a fast, easy way for you to make coleslaw. Okay, now again, because I'm going to keep this to eat for later, I'm just going to trim that, and the ends go right down here. Now, we want, if we're doing a coleslaw, we want, let's give this a stir. If we're doing coleslaw, we definitely want everything shredded fine. But for this dish, we want it chunky and rustic, and so it's not going to take any huge amount of effort to do up our cabbage, and that's another little wilted piece. Okay, so about an inch thick. Now this one is a little bit thicker than that, but we can fix that. It doesn't need to be an exact science. You want to make sure that your knife is sharp because cabbage is a little bit harder to cut through. And we are going to be using salt in this dish, and I want to talk to you today a little bit about salt. I'm going to turn this way. Salt is one of those things, and we've talked about this before, but I want to talk about it a little bit more. Salt is one of those things that has been really given a bad rap. Don't eat salt, it'll raise your blood pressure. Don't eat salt, it isn't good for you. Don't eat salt, it'll make you have a heart attack. Don't eat salt, don't eat salt. But the reality is there has never ever been a randomized control trial study done that showed that salt has any effect on blood pressure. There are some people that are super sensitive to it, and I have people say to me all the time, oh, if I eat too much salt, I feel all puffy, and yep, I absolutely believe that's true, but the question is not, did you eat too much salt? The question is, what kind of salt did you eat? Because if you're eating cheap, crappy table salt, the stuff that in Canada it's usually Windsor salt, if you're eating any type of iodized salt, it's not good for you. And it has no trace minerals in it. Now I want to show you my salt. Now check that out. Now do you see all the little pink bits in there, and light pink and dark pink? That is not dirty salt. That is amazingly delicious salt. Oh, bacon is sitting at it. You hear that sizzling? This is going to be wonderful. Okay, now we're going to let that keep cooking because we want that a little bit crunchier. That salt has all kinds of trace minerals in it. That salt is healthy salt. Anything that needs to be cleaned up should not be eaten, as far as salt goes. Now the salt that I use, and we've talked about this before, I know I keep repeating myself, but I really want you guys to know, not everything that I recommend that you buy needs to come from TSL Organics. As a matter of fact, the salt does not need to. You can order Redmond's Real Salt on Amazon. You can buy it in most health food stores, and I highly, highly recommend that you do. Okay, this is almost there. Let's get this out of the way. Now we're just letting this bacon get a little bit crispier. Some of it's starting to get there, some of it not so much. Okay, now while that is doing what it's doing, let's talk about what does raise your blood pressure. Now we've been told forever that it is salt that raises your blood pressure, and sugar isn't good for you. Sugar will make you gain weight if you eat too much, but carbohydrates, now that's where the nutrition is. Turns out that is not true. It has never been true, and they never had any data from medical studies to back it up. There was no scientific literature anywhere that backed that up at all. Okay, now we have our bacon almost to the crunchy point here. We're just going to let that sit a minute more. Now I've cut up half a small head of cabbage. How much cabbage is that? Well, I could have weighed it before I put it in the pan, but I didn't. So what we're going to do, we're going to put it on our scale now. And when we turn the scale on, the scale automatically zeros. All we're going to put back on the scale after we dump this in the pan is the cutting board. Okay, now this is lovely, and I am not taking out the bacon fat. We want the bacon fat in there because that's going to make this dish absolutely lovely. And we are going to just dump all of this cabbage in here, and I maybe should have had a bigger pan for this, but we will make it work. And when we put the cutting board back on here, it is at minus 594 grams. So we know that we just put 594 grams of cabbage in our pan. Now this, we're going to get a lid, and we're just going to let this fry in that bacon fat for just a wee little bit. And then we're going to dress it up and make it even more beautiful. Now, break this up a little bit. And then just put this lid on it. Okay, there we go. Now we're just going to leave that doing what it's doing. It's going to melt that cabbage, it's going to wilt the cabbage, and it's going to make it a little easier for us to add the rest of our ingredients. Okay, we're going to put this away. Now, even though we have the bacon fat in there, we are going to add 1 tablespoon of butter. And we are also going to add a little bit of an onion. Okay, now when you're peeling an onion, we're going to do this again. I love showing you guys how to do things that saves time and energy. Okay. When you are peeling an onion, you're not going to cut the whole root off. You're going to cut just the dirty bit off, but you're going to leave most of the root end there. And the reason that we do that is so that we're not fighting with the onion. Now, when you peel it, don't just take off the dry skin, take off the first layer. You're not wasting onion. This is usually really tough and not really appetizing. So if you take that first layer of onion off, your onion is now cleaned and ready to go. Okay, so turn it root side up. We're going to cut it halfway through, straight down. And now each half has a little bit of the root end on it. So when we cut it now I have seen a lot of people that cut it this way first. I'm not really sure that I understand why they do that, because when you cut it this way, it all comes apart in layers. I'm just going to move this before I end up knocking that pan off. One of my pet peeves is pan handles being left out here where people can bump them in. Okay, so now you can see, even though I've got that onion sliced, I didn't go all the way through, but look at that. It's just staying right together. So when we start cutting it this way, and we're going to make these a little bit chunkier, and we're going to measure this onion the same way that we measured the cabbage. We're just going to set it right on the scale. Now, if you are counting carbs, you are counting carbs, I hope. If you're counting carbs, knowing how much onion and cabbage we put in this is going to let us figure out how many carbs we're eating, because after the onion and the cabbage, there is no carbs in anything else. So that's a good thing to know, yeah? Okay, now this is starting to wilt, and you can see, we're just going to set this away. We're going to knead it again. Oh, look at how nice and crunchy that bacon is getting. Now, oftentimes, pardon me, you would put the onion in with the bacon so that it can kind of brown. Not going to worry about that today. Okay, so we had 500 and, what did we say, 572? Okay, so we have 572 grams of cabbage, and we have 57 grams of onion. And we're going to send that away because we're done with it. Set this back down here. We'll wipe it off in a little bit. Okay, now we have the onion in here. We have the cabbage in here. That is not going to be an exciting meal, guaranteed. So what do we do to dress it up? Well, one of the things that we're going to do to dress it up is we are going to add half a teaspoon of mustard seed. Now, this is a brown mustard seed from TSL Organics. I bet that's a surprise. And we're just going to sprinkle that in here. And we are also going to add half a teaspoon of pepper. And we're going to add a scant half a teaspoon of minced garlic. Now, why are we adding minced garlic and not garlic powder. The more sides there are to a piece of anything, the more flavor you're going to get out of it. So if we added powder, um, you wouldn't be able to see it in here, first of all, but second of all, the flavor would be much more intense. So if you want the flavor to be just a little more of an undertone, then you want to make sure that you're adding mince. If you want it more intense or invisible, a piece of bacon jumped out, then you want to use garlic powder or granulated garlic. So the smaller the garlic is ground or chopped, the more intense the flavor is going to be. Now, let's look on the bottom of this pan. Do you see that? That is all of these brown bits. That is amazing flavor from the bacon. So we are just going to pour this in there. That's going to deglaze the pan right underneath our bacon and cabbage. It's also going to steam that mustard seed so that it gets nice and soft so that it's edible. It's pretty crunchy right now when you first put it in. I've got an itch in my hand. Does that mean I'm going to win money? I don't know. We'll see. I hope so. Okay, now I see. Hi, Del. When do you put the butter in? We're going to put that in towards the end. And the reason we're going to put it in towards the end is because we just added the water. You can add chicken broth. Chicken broth is going to give it more flavor, but we're going to be adding lots of flavor here anyway. So you can use chicken broth or water. And the other thing that we're going to be adding is the only carton of dairy that you'll ever find in my house, and that is whipping cream. So we're just going to put in a wee bit of whipping cream, and once this has steamed for a few minutes, we're also going to add some salt to taste and the butter. So that's what we're going to do, and we are getting pretty close to being at the bottom of the hour. Even though we got started a little bit late, we managed to get it done. Okay, now if we look at the bottom of this pan now, you can see, well, maybe you can't see, but it has deglazed the pan. So all of the beautiful crunchy bits, all of that flavor that the bacon was making for us as it was browning is now going to be in our cabbage dish. I definitely want to get these bigger pieces chopped up as we stir it. And we are just going to add a dollop, 2 dollops, 1, 2. There we go. Not quite as much as some people might add. Now this is enough for probably 4 people, but you can also put this in the fridge and keep it for later, reheat it. Okay, now now that we are boiling this off, we're going to add the butter to it. And I turned the heat up because the heat is going to boil this off a little faster so that I'm not taking up all your day. Okay. Now that will go in the garbage in just a little bit. So we have garlic, we have onion, we have cabbage, we have bacon, we have pepper. We do not have our salt yet. Now just a little bit. I'm adding about half a teaspoon of salt. Salt to taste. Salt, if you're using good quality salt, it is going to help regulate your blood pressure. Sodium, potassium, magnesium, these are the things that are absolutely essential to helping regulate blood pressure. Do you get cramps in your legs or your feet at night? Could be that you need more magnesium. If you bend over and you're feeling a little bit weak and you know you've got stars, it could be that you need more sodium. So these are things that you want to add in your diet, and don't let somebody tell you that salt is bad, because salt is only bad if you're using a bad kind. So make sure Himalayan salt, Redmond's real salt, or you can come and buy seasoned salt from TSL Organics, because everything that we do is made with, all of our seasoning blends are made with organic ingredients that are good for you and will promote good health. Okay, this is almost ready. You do not have to cook this cabbage until it is just so wilty that it just droops. I like mine a little bit more on the crunchy side. And I'm just going to leave this boiling down a little bit more. But for right now, we are going to grab a spoon and a small bowl, and we are going to do a little bit of a taste and see if what we're doing is working out well. There is my bowl. Here we go. Now, just a wee little bit. We want the cabbage, the bacon, a little bit of the broth that's on the bottom. So this is, since we've made it the way we made it, this is like a bacon broth. You can't go wrong with bacon broth. Okay, now let's see. How this has turned out. That is lovely. It is my hope that any Irishman or any leprechaun would be happy to eat this. So, try it at home. Salt to taste, regardless of what you're doing. If you want more salt, if your taste buds are telling you that you need more salt, chances are you need more salt. And you think about it, any other mammal will go and look for a rock near a river that has salt on it. We put salt licks in for cattle and horses, and we are mammals as well. We need our salt to regulate our blood pressure. It is not salt that's giving you high blood pressure. It is the carbohydrates that you're eating that are causing inflammation in your body everywhere, not just in your fingers or your face, or it causes them everywhere, including in your arteries. That is absolutely delicious. And that is going to be supper tonight. And I am just enjoying my last cup of coffee for the morning, unless I make a pot of decaf. And the hazelnut is absolutely delicious. I will have that this afternoon at the market. So please do your very best to live your best version of this shining life until I see you on Friday at noon Mountain. And we will be doing something delicious and hopefully amazing then. So thank you very much for joining me today. I will see you on Friday at noon. Bye for now.